The second day of IEM Dallas 2024 is in the books, and in the most shocking story of the tournament, and possibly one of the biggest upsets of the year, G2, without their in-game leader, with home soil favorite Stewie2K stepping in, managed to eliminate tournament favorites Mouz in a dramatic 3-game series, which means the number 1 team in the world is exiting early, which leaves the field totally open. Dallas is now a tournament up for grabs for basically everyone, so every team remaining is scrapping to make a playoff spot, get through, and make it to the playoff stage this weekend. So if you missed out on the action live today, you're in the right place. So we'll be going over all of the matches today, everything you missed, and what you need to know going into tomorrow. But before we do that, make sure you guys take a second, leave a like, leave a comment down below, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It helps out immensely in the YouTube algorithm. While you are down there, consider becoming a channel member for $5 a month. You can support me directly in what we do here, gain access to exclusive emblems, emotes, regular uploads the night before anyone else gets them, and lastly, a shout out at the end of every video. And finally, check me out on Twitch, twitch.tv/LionHeartZ1337. I stream Sunday through Friday, 8:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We'll be talking about Dallas all week, and if the games tend to run late and into my stream time, we'll be watching the games live on Twitch as well, so come check me out. And with that done, let's go ahead and get started. Today got off to a quick start with Team Spirit taking on NAVI. This is the upper bracket semifinals, so the team that goes on gets a chance in the upper final to go straight to the semifinals, while whoever loses drops down to the lower bracket and remains in the tournament. So winning here is very important. Being able to skip one of the playoff best of threes going straight to the semifinals, it just really ups your odds of being able to win the tournament. And Spirit showed up looking for blood. Starting off on Ancient, Spirit aren't giving NAVI any room to breathe here. It's a quick, clinical 13-4 victory, and this is the scariest Team Spirit have looked in a while, because when you look at how this map went down, Donk had just kind of a pedestrian alright game. It's everybody else around him who's been stepping up their form lately. You got Magix leading the way with 19 kills and a 1.9 rating, just getting everything he wants all over the map. Shiro continuing to look dominant with the op in his hands, really making up for some of his questionable form in previous tournaments. And Zontix, while not quite impactful in this first game, has been great for them so far in the tournament. What's really scary about Team Spirit right now is if you go to the stats for IEM Dallas and you look at individual players, Shiro, Zontix, and Donk are all in the top 10 best players in the tournament. Zontix is leading the way with a 1.49 rating, Donk not that far behind with a 1.42, and Shiro not that far behind them, also playing quite well. And that means we are seeing the Team Spirit that absolutely burned Katowice to the ground, because it wasn't just the Donk show. Yes, Donk was reaching heights we'd never seen before, but the team as a unit was unstoppable. They gave you no quarter, because even if you managed to deal with Donk, you couldn't handle Zontix, Shiro in the background, Magix, Inkry next to Chopper. And now with Mouz going out, I'm really looking ahead here to this Faze Spirit matchup, because I would consider Faze and Spirit among the best 2 teams that are left to win the tournament. And whoever wins that series goes on to the playoffs. I think they are very likely to be making a run at the finals. Now, of course, I have stepped ahead of myself. We still have one more game to talk about in this series. We move on to Nuke, and interestingly enough, the one game that NAVI has taken off of Spirit in the past was on Nuke, and it was due to the excellent calling from Alexi B on the T side, but here they just didn't seem up to par. The CT side setups from Spirit were a lot stronger, so once they were able to get their economy going and recover from the pistol round loss, they were able to control dominantly the rest of the CT half. They take it over to the T side, they win the pistol round themselves, and then that's enough momentum for them to run over the rest of anything that NAVI had going and close the map out 13-8. Now honestly, you can look at what NAVI did here and start to kind of poke some holes in it, but honestly, Wonderful and Emma, they had a great map themselves. I don't even think the strat calling was that bad. I think Team Spirit are just a far superior team than what NAVI can bring to the table. Again, it's already hard enough to deal with Donk on his own, dropping 17 and 12, but when Zontix on top of it leads the server with 20 kills, that's just too much of a deficit to overcome, and that's why they're moving on. NAVI, they got a chance in the lower brackets. I think they're still good enough to qualify to the playoffs, but it's going to need to see some more out of JL. We're going to need to see some more of that world-class form from Wonderful, and there's a little bit more tightness, a little more cohesion, a little bit more team play with some of the flashing support and trading, something they were very good about in the major, but have been kind of sloppy about since. Moving on to our first elimination game of the day, we had M80 taking on Heroic. Honestly, listen, all credit to M80. I think they've played some good matches here and there in their last few tournaments. They're a solid tier 2 org. It just, the reality is that what Heroic is, even though they're on the outside looking in terms of the tier 1 talent, the gap between tier 1 and tier 2 is very well defined, and Heroic are definitely the type of team to shut out M80 pretty much every single time outside of maybe like a fluke best of 1. And that's what we saw play out here. We go to the first map on Ancient, and Heroic are just playing fantastic CT defense the entire half. It's an 8-4 half for them, very dominant, and frankly, this is what we mean when we talk about that tier 2 difference. The depth of the strat book, the quality of the in-game leaders and the coaches pretty much makes it that once your 1A or maybe even your 1B strategy doesn't work, these teams really start to struggle to get anything going. They need to ride the momentum of either having a hot map from one of their players or exploiting maybe a weakness they found in the demos, but if they get stopped enough times, the T-side is just going to grind to a halt because they're not really sure what to do. The difference between M80 and a team like Heroic is that if Heroic were in the same position, they have enough time, they have enough experience to start going to alternate strats, go really, really deep in that bag, and try and make something work. And you know what, credit to M80, they swap to their CT side, they win the pistol round and the round after, they get a few more rounds along the way, but it's just really not a competitive map overall. It never felt like at any point they were able to stop what Heroic were doing. Tessus leads the way with 26 kills and a 1.79 rating. And while rating 2.0 on HOTV is not a perfect stat, it's a great snapshot of just the differences in players' abilities map to map. And when you look at M80, they had nobody above a 1.0. A 1.0 is considered a dead average game. And you look over Heroic, Tessus 179, Nerds with a 1.49, Nikados with a 1.33, Shush with a 1.26, and even Kixin, who had the worst map out of all of them, was still a dead even 1.0 rating. It's just not enough from the M80 guys. And it's the same story in Mirage. Heroic, their T-side, just better coordinated, better executed. They run off another 8-4 half. They swap over to the CT. They win the pistol +2. At that point, they already have 10 rounds. It's 10-4. M80 are struggling to get anything going on their T-side, and there's not enough time to recover the economy and try and run off a comeback. Heroic only need 3 more rounds. They're just going to wait their time, get their ops, get their economy right, because they know they have enough time to start trading rounds with you until it's over. And that's how it plays out. Once again, Tessus, 17 kills, leading the game. He led the server. He was just very dominant in the series. And that's why Heroic are moving on, and that's why M80 are going home. Moving on to our next elimination series, we had Big versus FlyQuest. And here, Big looked really comfortable against FlyQuest up and down the series. We opened up on Ancient with a 13-6 stomp. FlyQuest looked uncompetitive in this game, utterly lost on both sides of the map. Meanwhile, I felt like everyone on Big was just taking turns and having big rounds, no pun intended. And once again, rating, not a perfect encapsulation of how the game went, but you look at Big, everybody's in the green and well above a 1.3 rating for the map. That just means that FlyQuest were not able to stop anything they were going to any significant extent. And really, it felt like Ince was the only guy giving any kind of fight with 18 kills on his end. But even then, the rounds just felt paltry, the T side felt uninspired, and the CT side couldn't hold anything. But full credit to FlyQuest for bouncing back on the next map, Nuke. Because listen, you open up, it's an elimination game, you just got absolutely torched on Ancient in a way that's really hard to recover from, and you bounce back, starting off on the T side of Nuke. You lose the pistol round, so you're already behind on momentum, but you still manage to turn that into an 8-4 T half on Nuke. That really is an incredible turnaround, all things considered. And it all started and ended with Ince, who once again has a monster first half here. 12 kills, 10 assists, a 1.56 rating. That's a monster opening half when your team really needed it most. For Big on the CT side, it really felt like a lot of it was just kind of like timing going the wrong way. It was all about like small margins and losing some very clutch 1v1s that really made the difference between being an 8-4 half and like a 6-6 half. And it looked really dire where early on to the second half, FlyQuest find match point 12-5, but the Searson show began shortly after, and Big lock in for 7 straight rounds to force overtime. And in the overtime, they looked really good as well. Once again, Searson just going absolutely sicko mode with the op in his hands, and that allows Big to take the second map in heartbreaking fashion. For FlyQuest, you had 7 attempts to close the game and you just couldn't do it. That's gonna hurt. That's gonna be a tough one to absorb. And it's going to be even tougher to absorb as you fly home because you are eliminated. Next up, and we're starting to get into some juicy matchups of the day here, we have Faze Clan against Virtus Pro. And going into this tournament, if you'd asked me if Faze versus Virtus Pro was going to produce a good series, I would have said no because VP haven't looked that great. But here we are, and man, Virtus Pro, I think this is the best they've looked all year, and especially with this new roster. And that comes at the expense of the fact that they lose this series 2-1 to Faze, but it was a grinder. Every map went the distance. Look at these scorelines: 13-10, 16-13, 13-11. At any point, just a 1-round swing difference could have been between Faze losing and Virtus Pro winning, and we're going to talk about an entirely different narrative for this day. Right out the rip, before we get into each map, we gotta talk about Electronic and Jame. Electronic for this series went 73-56, his best performance of the year. and unfortunately it does come in a loss. But still, there were so many good signs here for the electronic experiment with Virtus Pro, especially because James finally showed up with some form next to him. If they can just iron out some of these T-side inconsistencies, and electronic maintains this form, we're going to see that VP that I was talking about when they made this move, a VP that could be a world champion contender going forward. But we'll save that speculation for another day as we get into our first map on Mirage. This one was a grinder, very close halves on both sides. Even though it felt like both teams were very evenly matched in terms of the fragging department, I think this game really comes down to a question of economic control. Even though Virtus Pro loses the pistol round, we get to the first gun round and they lose there. Instead of opting for a full save, they go for a force on the 4th round that's successful, and that puts Faze on the back foot economically. It breaks their economy even though they've just round 3 rounds in a row previously because CT economy still sucks, and that forces Faze into a situation where they got a half buy the round after, they lose that. They have to full save the round after, they lose that. Finally, they get back to a full gun round. VP have won 3 rounds in a row now. They still managed to lose that full gun round, and now Virtus Pro is super secure in their economy while Faze are having to save another time. That's 3 non-full buys in the half for them. And you contrast that with what Virtus Pro did on their CT side, and despite losing both pistol rounds, and losing pistol round in CT especially being so brutal, Faze only managed to break their economy once after the first gun round, and VP were just in control of the CT half. Their economy stayed strong so they could absorb those blows from Faze, and that kept them in position to win the map in the long run, because they had more full buys than Faze did. And then we move on to Inferno, and in an absolute classic match between each other, we had a barn burner go to overtime, and frankly, I'm shocked it even got that far, because for the first half, Faze dominated on the CT side, not allowing Virtus Pro to go anywhere, Frozen going absolutely sicko mode up and down the server. You got Robs right next to him, they both go for 17 and 16 respectively. Meanwhile, on the T side for VP, they just couldn't do anything. Nothing was working for them. Mavic draw banana, failed. A pushes, failed. They managed to scrape by 4 rounds, but they felt like miracles considering how good the CT side control was from Faze. And then we swap to the T side for Faze, and they win the pistol round plus the first 2. We're already looking at an 11-4 lead here. You think, okay, fair enough. We're going to map 3. There's no way Faze could lose this. And then Virtus Pro runs off 8 straight back-breaking rounds. Total CT side dominance as Inferno continues to be nearly impregnable by most T sides. And you can tell Faze Clan were getting a little desperate. We're at 11-11. They go for the B rush straight into the loving embrace of James. 2 players dying in Molotov. James getting the pick on top of it, totally shutting down the B push and achieving match point to cap off this insane comeback. And with the series on the line, what did Faze do the very next round? Well, Frozen just walks his ass up banana by himself, swings, sends Flit to the Shadow Realm instantly, decides, you know what, well, I got 1, I might as well get 2, catches James with the grenade in his hand, boom, he's dead. And then he pushes on the B side by himself. Faze aren't even there with the bomb to back him up. He's walking to clear backside at dark. Fame is tucked at spam box, ready to kill Frozen. He has it dead to rights, gets the spray on him, whiffs it. What does Frozen do? Take a second behind the pillar, swing out, and bang his fucking head off. What an insane 3K from Frozen. And it puts Faze directly into overtime. He caps it off with a 4K. Absolutely insane round from Frozen. He carries Faze through this map and keeps them in the series. And I'm just going to call it how it is. Frozen just single-handedly forcing overtime there, it broke Virtus Pro for the rest of this map. They didn't do anything in the overtime. Faze wins the map 16-13, and we're going to Ancient for the decider. And what we saw play out was a classic back and forth game between Electronic and Rain. We finally got the Rain game of the tournament, where Rain wakes up, gets a Senkai boost, and powers Faze through a map they really need him to do it in. But before Rain could unleash the beast, the story of the first half was Virtus Pro, Virtus Plow, running over Faze's CT side. They dominate 8-4, Electronic just entering like a goddamn maniac, just looking like vintage Electronic with a 14 kill opening half. And honestly, they need it because this is not a strong opping map, so James traditionally does not play well in Ancient. This is why they got Electronic, to step up their fragging in the times they need like this. But I don't think anyone expected Faze to open up the second half with an 8 straight round run that put them right back in the game. And again, it was rain, reading Verse Pro like an absolute book. And VP, they gamely fight back. They managed to push it to 11 after a string of 3 rounds, some heartbreaking clutches, not going Faze's way. But Faze, it felt kind of inevitable they were going to win this game. They had the better setups on T side, and the CT side defense from VP just kept falling flat because everyone who wasn't electronic just didn't seem ready to step up in this final game. A very close series all around, and a lot of good to take away for Verse Pro. They're not eliminated, they still have a chance to make the playoffs, and I think they'll do it, and they do look like a team that can contend to make a deep run come the weekend. But enough messing around, we got 2 more elimination series to conclude the day. Starting off, we had Liquid taking on the Falcons, and going into this, I really thought Liquid were going to be much stronger against the Falcons than what we saw here. The Falcons really gave them a run for their money. It was a close 3-game set. Again, you look at these scores outside of the first game on Nuke, we get a 13-6 win by the Falcons, followed by 13-11, 13-10 wins by Liquid to close it out. Falcons were in this. They could have easily won on Ancient or Anubis and sent Liquid home, which would have been a major upset for North American Counter-Strike, but that's not what happened, so let's see how it played out individually map by map. Opening things up on Nuke, the Falcons started off looking really strong. They run off a 9-3 T-side half, and the CT side defense from Liquid here was frankly pitiful. It looked very, very uncoordinated. There was not much team support, a lack of trades. They allowed far too much map control to go the Falcons' way. And despite Cadian, Twist, and NAF all playing pretty okay, there's 2 very ugly performances at the bottom of the scoreboard, namely Skulls and Yakindar, who again continue to be the 2 hardest to deal with aspects of this team. I want to take a second briefly and mention that I've been pretty hard on Yakindar lately, but I'm starting to rethink and reevaluate my opinion on him, especially because I'm paying much more attention to Skulls. In the description below, I'll leave a link to a video done by Maui Snake who breaks down what Skulls is doing here in this Liquid team in much more detail, and frankly, I have to admit that I was not giving enough credit to Yakindar for taking the initiative to be the aggressive entry player that this team needs. It just hasn't been going his way. We'll see later on in the series that when it does, he actually looks quite good, but the reality is he's in an unenviable position here because Twist, NAF, Cadian, these are slow players, so it has to fall into somebody to be the first man in, and that more often than not is being Yakindar, because Skulls just frankly is not contributing much of anything on either side of the game, and he's continuing to look like the weakest link in the Liquid roster. But going down 1-0 in a series doesn't mean you're out, especially when we move to Ancient, and Twist goes off for a monstrous 36 kill map here with a 2.0 rating, 122 ADR. He had all the first kills. He was getting every kill. He was by far the best player in the server by a country goddamn mile, and despite that, Liquid still found themselves in a position where they very nearly lost despite this effort. Which really might be the most egregious part about this, because you get everything you could possibly want here out of the first half. You open up on the T side, Twist goes off for 21 kills, you win 8-4 in the half, but there were some early warning signs that the Falcons might be able to make a comeback here, because outside of Twist, no one else was doing anything. 5 kills on Yakindar, 6 kills on Cadian, 6 kills on Skulls, 5 kills on NAF. And yeah, Twist is taking the lion's share of the attention here, but someone else needs to step up. And when we swap sides, Twist barely slows down at all. You guys managed to get to match point 12-8, but yet you guys start to throw away rounds. There's no reason for this to be a 13-11 scoreline, very nearly overtime if it wasn't for a defuse on the very final round to win it. This should have been a comfortable Liquid win, but they got the job done regardless, and we're moving on to a final decider. We moved to Anubis, and frankly I'm a little bit worried out the gate here because despite this being a very T-sided map, Liquid can't get much going. They only managed to get 5 rounds. The CT side defense for Falcons looked very tight, very consistent, and have put them in a great spot going into the second half with that 7-5 lead. But out of nowhere, what do you know, the 2 players that have been the most suspect on Liquid really stepped up in a big way when you needed it. Yakindar and Skulls had a great closing map, and you combine that with still steady great numbers from Cadian, NAF, and Twist, and that's more than enough for Liquid to mount a great CT side comeback, shut out the Falcons entirely, and take the map 13-10. And for the Falcons, they're going to look back on this one and regret it, because what were they doing? They went A so many times on the T site over and over, and they kept trying to pressure that bomb site, and eventually Skulls, Jukindar, they stopped allowing it to be exploited. They managed to take those picks, take the retakes, control the site, and once this continued A pressure failed, it felt like the Falcons didn't have much to fall back on. And that in the end was the difference between being eliminated and moving on. And to close the day, we had by far the best set of the tournament thus far. We had G2 taking on Mouz. Winner goes on, loser goes home. Mouz, #1 in the world, versus G2, just trying to scrape by with Stewie 2K as their stand-in. Now, I'm going to give all the credit for G2 for being able to pull off this series. This is a huge upset under normal circumstances for them, and doing it with a stand-in, especially with their endgame leader missing, is nothing short of incredible. But I think it is also fair to say that Mouz, they've been playing damn near every tournament since the new year started, and I think a little bit of the jet lag, the schedule seems to be catching up to them here, because even though we saw some of the best of Mouz in this series, we also saw some uncharacteristic mistakes from them, and that team cohesion that led them to be the #1 team in the world just fell short in the biggest moments, especially down the wire when they really needed it. I don't really think that losing in this tournament in this way is that much of an indictment on their place as the best team in the world. We're coming up on the player break. I think they're just ready to take a break and come back at it with fresh eyes. I wouldn't really do anything. I wouldn't be freaking out. You've won 2 straight tournaments. You've been dominant since the major. I don't think Mouz are that worried about missing out on a finals appearance here. But some speculation for another time. Moving on to our first map on Inferno. G2 really looked good here. An uncharacteristically sloppy CT side for Mouz allowed G2 to run up an early 7-5 half lead so that they could cruise with some control of the CT side. However, it appeared to not be that easy out the gate as they lose the pistol and fall behind economically, but once they got control of this game, it seemed like the Mouz strat book really ran into a brick wall, and its name was Munacy. His op impact on the second half was absolutely critical to G2's success here, and shut down multiple rounds out the gate, especially with some great apartments defense from Nexa and Hunter, while Nico and Stewie worked the B control separately. Munacy was just going crazy. He was in full control of this map, showing that great superstar potential we've seen from him throughout this year, which helped G2 secure an early series lead 1-0, moving on to Nuke. And there's no way around it. Mouz are still, even when they're not looking at top form, the best Nuke team in the world for my money. And this was utter dominance. G2 take the pistol round, so it takes a little while for Mouz to get going, but once they get their economy right, it's 7 straight T rounds, and this is a very simple and straightforward setup from Mouz. They love to abuse the outside control, throwing the wall of smokes, baiting time. They'll re-smoke the wall cross a secret sometimes twice in the same round, just drawing out so much time from the CTs. The CTs tend to get antsy, start going for map control elsewhere, or they're going to push ramp, maybe try and pitch into lobby, try and get some kind of advantage, while Mouz are comfortable waiting till way deep in the round to execute upper or lower and take the bomb sites with ease, and we saw that on display here. And leading the way was Rowan, the 1-2 punch with him and Zershim, which is utterly unstoppable, allowing Mouz to equal out the series 1-1, and then we head to the decider on Ancient. And the story of Ancient has got to be Nico leading the way, in-game leader and top fragger for G2 when they needed him most. They start out, Mouz look in full control. They win 5 of the first 6 on the CT side. It looks like the T side strat book just isn't working for G2 whatsoever, but G2, they slow it down. They get control. They start to get their full buys in. They manage to take 5 straight T rounds to bring it back and keep it a 6-6 half going into their CT side defense. And the story of this game and what made the difference for G2 was their ability to win in the clutch. So many low man rounds, 2v2s, 3v3s, that in the end G2 were able to pull out. The biggest one for me, it's 9-9. Open up, Zershim gets a great pick in mid to take the map control for rounds. They move through Donut, they're going for the A hit. Nexa equalizes with a huge double pick from Temple, all alone on the A side, managing to keep the round close. And then things grind to a halt. Mouz slow down the pace, play the map control, try and work this 3v3 into a favorable position. And even though they nearly get what they're looking for, they manage to isolate a 1v1 with the bomb down. Torji versus Nico. Nico, time and time and again, even when he's not in peak form, shows why he's one of the best clutch players to ever play Counter-Strike. He calmly works his way up to the bomb, ices out where Torji is, and hits an incredible headshot to get the round advantage, the 10-9 lead. And those were the rounds that made the difference, allowed G2 to win a stunning 2-1 victory over Mouz and send them home in this tournament. One exciting day of games, and with Mouz going out in dramatic fashion, this really is anyone's tournament to win. The games tomorrow are going to be incredible. I'm really looking forward to see who's actually going to pull out and win this, because all the remaining teams outside of 9Z, who are really unproven, have a great shot at winning this. This is like the ideal bracket going into this. We still have VP, NAVI, Spirit, Faze, Liquid, G2, Vitality, all contending to win this tournament. That's an exciting lineup of teams. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, and all that to keep up to date with recaps as they happen. Shout out to my channel members, Bubblesj, Furley, Justin, and Jesse for keeping the lights on. I appreciate you guys immensely. If you want to become a channel member, look in the description down below and consider doing it. $5 a month helps me out immensely. Other than that, I'll see you guys soon with another video. Peace.